Good. Waiting for the double thumbs up from Michelle. We're good? Perfect. All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order. Start with a roll call. McKee here, Schultz here, Bodema present, Parentcamp
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
All right, if you'd like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Agenda approval. I know there was a couple small changes. I think we're going to add 6A. Ken's going to give us a presentation on watershed. Small 3 or 4 minute presentation on watershed update. And then removing 7A and 7D from the agenda. Is there anything else from staff or council?
7A, 7D. I'm gonna pull 7C from consent.
We'll do that on consent.
Okay. I always screw that up.
It's okay. All good? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, commission representatives. We have Corinne here for planning and our parks and trails. Phil.
He's online.
Online, perfect. Great, thank you guys. Then we will move on to open forum, which is for items not on today's agenda, and Matt can help get us going, but typically 3-minute. Council won't kind of get into a back and forth discussion, but it's time to get information through council and then kind of take it from there. So, Joe, if you'd like to come up. I do.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Likewise.
Pledge of allegiance. I haven't been to a meeting since Johnny Shetty was. You know how
welcome.
long it's been.
Could you please state your name and address?
I'm Joe Nato, live on Rush Creek Drive.
Thank you.
I came tonight because we've been after our roads. I've lived in Corcoran for 45 years, and it's a shame to see the roads. We put them in. We paid $10,000 at the time to have the road put in. About 3 years after that, they resealed it, and they've come along. They've had somebody do a few cracks and things. But in the last 3 years, I take a walk at night. The cul-de-sac, they came in, they patched it a little bit, missed some spots, and it was like they came in at the lunch break or something, and they had to go. And then now they were back this year. They were back twice and filled a couple holes. They don't get all the holes done. Looks like they're throwing a cold patch in, then throwing a little hot tar on top. So I don't know if we need to have more money spent on our roads, or I'm not blaming Pat or anybody like that. They can only work with what they have. But I didn't see any write-ups in the monthly newsletter that was sent out or quarterly about any paving or anything like that. So I see a lot about park trails and this and that. And it's nice to have parks and stuff. We got all kinds of baseball fields and that. But I think if you actually ask the people that use that stuff, we don't use it that much. We use our roads more than anything. And now with all the housing that's going in Buffalo, St. Michael, Albertville, those people are all feeding down to Cork. I'm just saying that, I mean, we should have plans set 10 years ago that we were going to pave one road a year, so that we got back to Gold and Trailhaven and all those feeder roads from north to south. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, appreciate it. And just for clarity,
Yes.
which was it? The Rush Creek
Rush Creek Drive,
Drive?
up in
Okay.
the northwest corner. Hillside Drive, another good one. I have a cousin that lives there. I go over there a lot. So,
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
all right.
Appreciate it. Anyone else for open forum? Okay. Anyone online? Okay. Then we will move on to item 6, which is presentation from Commissioner Gunther.
Mayor and Council, thanks for giving me a couple of minutes tonight.
By way of introduction, my name is Ken Gunther. I represent the city of Corcoran on the Elm Creek Watershed Commission. I'm the commissioner that the council appoints annually to represent the community. I just want to talk about two programs that the watershed is involved in or developing this year. I'm thinking I'll come back maybe in the February, March timeframe and come up with a meeting I just could. If you have a slow night sometime this winter, I can give a year-end report on watershed matters, and I'll talk more in depth about these opportunities. But I think one of the things I mentioned when I was in this past spring was that the watershed has been pretty active in developing funding for grassroots initiatives in the community. And because Corcoran represents such a big area within that watershed, there's just a lot of opportunity for program funding within the community. And I'll get into that maybe in more detail next fall, but I want to talk about two things that the watershed is doing. One, the watershed belongs to an alliance of other watersheds in the West Metro area, and together we've hired a full-time educator. And this person has sort of two areas within their job description. One is to go around and provide education programs on water stewardship in local schools. The other is to educate the communities themselves on water stewardship and environmental issues. So one of the things that the educator is doing, and Corcoran through Kevin and I have some input on directing this, is to develop programs for HOAs to educate them on common issues related to HOA management, resource management within the HOA. We have a good opportunity on the watershed because we share a lot of experience with the cities of Maple Grove and Plymouth, who are several years ahead of us in their development cycle. And what we've seen in kind of sharing the HOA experiences there is that HOA management turns over pretty quickly and pretty regularly, and you get a lot of lost institutional knowledge. So as you all know, when the HOAs come in and you approve their initial charters, the developers running the HOA up until some threshold of sales, maybe 75% or whatever on the project, and then typically it turns over to the residents themselves from the HOA. After successive generations of turnover within the HOA, there's kind of a loss of connection with the original engineering, the original goals and standards that the HOA had for managing common areas, whether it's the water features or swales, that kind of thing. And so what we're thinking about doing is creating educational tools, whether it's online stuff or live presentations of HOA groups on things that they can do within their own neighborhood, their own community to engage in water stewardship. And you'll hear about best management practices that the groups can engage in and be better stewards of the neighborhoods that they sort of manage and govern. So we're looking for ways to empower people sort of at the very grassroots level, rather than maybe coming into the council sort of through the county level and saying, you know, we want to sort of have people doing this stuff. We're going to try and get the people who are really sort of directly involved in managing their neighborhoods, some educational information on that. The second thing, and it's related to this, is the watershed's going to be doing more in terms of chloride management practices and educating us in that regard. So right now the focus on chloride management education has been on the businesses within the community, the people who have the big parking areas. We're going to advance that to include faith communities, and during the upcoming year we'll be looking to partner with the faith communities who now are starting to have really large parking lots, and work with them on developing best management practices for chloride use. And then we're also going to look at things like HOAs to maybe get involved in some educational programs there. With the HOAs, we've got an audience that involves a lot of driveways, paved areas, stormwater runoff, and a lot of people using salt all winter. And once you sort of get into some of the educational materials, it's pretty interesting to find out that most of us don't really understand best use of salt in the wintertime. And there are best management practices that can be applied there. So both of those programs, the educator thing directed toward the HOA and the chloride initiative, I think when I come in next spring, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about some of the funding and the partnering opportunities that might exist there and what the watershed's doing. But because they're working on it, and because Commissioner and Kevin, as a representative on the technical committee, had asked the watershed to start focusing on HOAs as a partner in some of the things we're trying to do. I wanted to report that to you, get it on your radar, so when I come back in the spring, you will heard about it and maybe have some thoughts on what we can do in that. The final thing I want to mention, and we get a report from Hennepin County every month, and Hennepin County Environmental Services, who have developed sort of a process toward partnering with landowners in western Hennepin County on environmental stewardship issues and water issues. And they really have made a lot of strides in that regard. And I have the opportunity every month to hear updates on how they're working with landowners in western Hennepin County to address water concerns and engage in better environmental stewardship. And I want to mention a success story that we've had in Corcoran, and I'm not sure, I don't think we get much report on this, but I think we need to hear about it. I want to publicly, as a citizen of Corcoran and as a commissioner, I want to thank the Bodema family for what they've done in the restoration of their property in Corcoran. I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing it tonight. I think it's actually worthy of a presentation to this group because Commissioner or Councilmember Bodema sits on this group. You're probably not going to get him to do a presentation, but this has been a phenomenal story of multi-party partnering, collaboration on restoring land in Corcoran to its original state. And I believe the project was largely completed. So maybe at some point upcoming, it would be worthy of a presentation or perhaps visits by those commissioners or whatever. I leave that up to the bodies. But I want to thank John and his family for what they've done. This is really unique and rare in the life of the commission and the city of Corcoran. I can't think of during my tenure here going back to the 90s when something like this was occurred in our city. So for the poet doesn't know, the Bodema family has a larger parcel of land in northwest Corcoran that was being farmed, and they set aside and restored a substantial number of acres to its original environmental condition. And it's just a really good story. It's not something that you can talk really about. So,
Thanks for sharing that.
not
That's
trying to
awesome.
embarrass the guy.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
So that's it. We'll find a good night to come back in the spring. I'll give you the annual report and talk about budgets and
Sounds good.
programs.
And let us know when you have some of the more details on some of the educational pieces, if we, if we can partner on putting in the newsletter to get out to the HOAs or finding ways to get in touch with.
Well, the one thing we do want to do is perhaps, and we can reach out to the watershed, maybe approach the big communities and see if they're interested in partnering on the chloride thing.
Yeah,
Because that's the new direction of the watershed.
very cool.
Right.
Thanks so much. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
So,
Go for it.
since you brought me up,
Yeah.
I can tell you about the project we did. And I have, so I don't know if you saw did you see the drone footage of,
Just had the report. Hennepin County Environmental gives us a monthly report on all of the projects that they're involved with. And this has been one of them that we've been getting reports on since the beginning.
yeah. So I have an extensive library of drone footage before the project, during the project, and then the project is 80, probably 80, the work is done, depending on how the winter and spring goes. So we took for the public, I guess, we took 100 acres and took it out of farming and created a wetland and prairie restoration with pollinators. And basically we cut drain tile and recreated, I think, 11 new wetlands. And so we've got, it's just phenomenal space and watershed. I do plan to create a presentation, and I think it'd be good. I don't know if you guys would like to see it, but
I'd
I
love to.
do plan to go back to the watershed, because it was U.S. Fish and Wildlife, DNR, the watershed, Hennepin County. Like, it was a crazy
That's awesome.
figure. It was like a dream that I had, and it's turned out to be like really amazing.
That's fantastic.
It was a classic case of, I'll tell you the story in a more formal presentation if you want
Sounds
to hear.
good.
But
Yeah, I'd
it
love
should be a template for people to get along and get something really positive done.
It's a good success story, believe me, from having experienced a lot of times when the collaborations didn't work.
Right.
Or, you know, the expenses weren't warranted or whatever. This one worked.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely would love to hear about that more.
Love
time,
to
so.
see
Well, thank you for the shout out.
Have a good one, guys. Okay, on to consent agenda, which now consists of just items B and C.
Did you know he was going to do that? Talk about me.
No.
Oh, okay. That was a surprise.
I'm glad he did it. That's a pretty cool story in the project. Consent agenda consisting of items 7B and 7C. Does anyone want to pull anything?
I would like to pull 7C.
Okay. Anyone want to pull 7B, or are we good there? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 7B.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then John, 7C. Floor is
Yes. I wanted to talk a little bit, before we approve, I want to reiterate some of the things we discussed while we were putting together this item of support. First, before I start, the words that I say are not to disparage any individuals. The sheriff, the winter plow truck drivers, the individuals that work for Hennepin County are not the problem. Basically, it's an unequal distribution of votes and decision-making, and the same unequal distribution of funds and resources. That's where my frustration lies with Hennepin County. I applaud Champlin's and Dayton's decision to declare their intention to leave Hennepin County. I appreciate their reasoning, and I would like to add my thoughts on why they and our town should give this serious consideration. There are many reasons, and I would like to highlight ours. The first reason is unprosecuted crime. Judges throw out our cases. Prosecutors also do not sufficiently prosecute our town's cases. It's a very noticeable trend that has impacted most cities in our county. The only law they seem to want to enforce is when our city doesn't make farmers bag their organic recycling. They even planned on giving away our crime lab to Minneapolis 2 years ago. Number two, mandated policy that is unpaid for. It's in the form of unfunded mandates. One example is their desire to have organic recycling, but is paid for by the city and by each homeowner. Number three, the broken transportation system. The county said multiple times they would not pay for light rail shortages. They have recently picked up the tab for predictable light rail cost overruns, and that was after Hennepin County specifically said they wouldn't. Our town has unaddressed transportation issues. They were brought up just 15 minutes ago. We have more people travel on county roads in Corcoran in each year than will ride the Southwest light rail system each year. That seems crazy to me, but it's true. We have more people driving in Corcoran than riding the Southwest Light Trail. And they just spent $1 billion on a cost overrun. They don't like our roads so much that their official policy is to give Corcoran County Road 10 and County Road 50 and all of the costs associated with managing it. Like Cousin Eddie said, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Number four, Hennepin County invests all of their money in one city. So they also pay tax us in Hennepin County to pay for stadiums that go, where else? Minneapolis. All hospitals, government buildings, arena upgrades, practice facilities, all are located in one area of the county, Minneapolis. The burden is everyone's. Number 5, Minneapolis is short on police. Guess who fills the space? Currently, Minneapolis marshals county and really actually state resources to backfill their own police department. There are lots of reasons why they're short on police right now, and we won't get into them. But they should not be Corcoran's problems, but they oftentimes end up being Corcoran's problems. Those are just a handful of examples. There are many, many more. The problem is that Hennepin County loves when our big checks come in, and equally love that we don't get a say in how that money is spent. There are some solutions. We could have a bicameral government in Hennepin County, where each city gets a vote. As it stands right now, Minneapolis essentially gets 3 and maybe 4 votes, and Corcoran splits our votes with half the county. We essentially get 1/20 of a vote. They also could be stripped of the authority to make cities be the enactor of their policies. So today, they essentially have the power to mandate Corcoran city policies. Oftentimes, we have a vote, but we have to vote yes, or Hennepin County will force us to vote yes, or make us do it anyways. If they want to enact legislation, I say to Hennepin County, go ahead and enforce it on your own. We shouldn't be a party to that. The other option is we could leave. I side with Champlin and Dayton. Tonight, we officially support Champlin and Dayton's right to leave the county. And I would add that we should have the right ourselves and encourage others to join us. It's a very difficult, tremendously difficult process. It's actually never been done in Minnesota and is very hard. When they find a path, we say we join them. I say we join the Independence County Coalition and ask other forgotten, silent cities that are taken for granted by existing structures. Thank you for your support of Dayton and Champlin, and vote of support of changing the landscape of Hennepin County or leaving if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you sharing that. And we did discuss this a bit at 2 meetings ago, or last meeting when we had this brought back to us. The resolution itself, and I think you summarized a lot of the stuff well. I had spoken a bit about how there was little glimmers here and there, but certainly not, broadband and things like that, but certainly not anywhere near what we've been paying into for years and years and years. We're not getting anywhere near a percentage of that back actually into the community and investments in infrastructure and anything back from the county. And the biggest concern to me is that I don't see how that changes anytime soon or ever with the structure of how the county is. And you could have myself or John or Alan in that seat, and you're outvoted 6-1 on every single issue, and I don't see how that changes. So maybe something outside the box like this is a route, if someone can figure it out, worth exploring. So yeah, appreciate you bringing it up.
And I think at a minimum it raises awareness of those disparities and those issues. So even if no one is ever actually able to successfully thread that needle, drawing attention to the lack of prosecution in itself is valuable.
Yeah, cool. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item C.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. On to planning business. We have 2 items, 8A and 8B, which is the Sunram interim use permit and a storage interim ordinance. So we will have a public comment opportunity first if anyone wants to speak on those issues. Now's your time. Otherwise, we will go into 8A.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on open forum can go to the podium. Please state your name and address. And then anyone joining us virtually, you can press *9 or click reaction and raise your hand, and we'll come to you when you get a chance.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Matt, you said open forum. This is
Public
public
comment
opportunity related to the SUNRAM and the storage interim ordinance.
Correct.
Yes,
Thank
you.
You bet.
Planning business, yep.
Yeah, my name is John Dugan. I live with my wife and 4 kids at 20415 County Road 50. We've lived in Corcoran since 2014. The south side of our lot borders the Sunram property. We came to the planning meeting about this permit. We have encountered a lot of frustrations, let's say, in the past with the volume of trucks that have been coming in, the dirt that's dragged around County Road 50. Our driveway, we come out, we hit that dirt, it's dangerous, let alone it's messy. The noise from the trucks is very loud, and perhaps most importantly is that it seems to go on all hours of the day. It's from 6 a.m. all the way till recently midnight. And it's, you know, I want to put a baseline that I love how much Corcoran supports small business. I think that's absolutely critical. I understand the need to have a place to dump what's being dumped. Hopefully there's governance over that in terms of what exactly is being dumped, but I understand the need. I think our issue is again, there seems to have been historically very little oversight in enforcing the guidelines that have been set forth. I know that I've been in touch with the city before about this issue, about our frustrations, the potential dangers, the questioning of is this material being tested? Are we certain that when spring comes and all the snow thaws, that the runoff is appropriately running off? How much are we dumping? Who is overseeing this? And are we operating within the bounds of what's being permitted? Those are the main concerns. Again, I very much support small business. My biggest concern is that if this is allowed, that the guidelines in that permit are followed, and that it's not allowed to just, that it's not just words on a piece of paper that aren't being adhered to. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Anyone else for items 8A or 8B? Okay, then we will go on to discussion of item 8A, which is the Sunram interim use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Since this has been an item reviewed by Planning Commission and at the last meeting, we can go through a formal presentation. Otherwise, I'm happy just to summarize that this was reviewed by the Planning Commission where it was unanimously recommended with the change from a 40-foot height limit to a 35-foot height limit. The staff recommendation from that meeting was similar to the Planning Commission recommendation, except for we wanted to identify an elevation as well as a 35-foot height limit to base the height of the stockpile, so it can't exceed a height based on the base elevation there is today. And then last council meeting, this was also reviewed and discussed, and the direction from council at that time was to add to the resolution limiting business operational hours to weekdays, Monday through Friday, not allowing work to occur on weekends, and staff included language that also includes federal holidays, assuming that was also the intention of the direction. And then there was also a discussion of a notification requirement to surrounding properties when truck trips would exceed a certain number. Language is currently in the resolution as paragraph O.
Both of those?
Yes, both of them are in the resolution. Paragraph M addresses the business hours. Paragraph O requires a notification process. The staff report does explain there are several concerns with our ability to really oversee that over a long period of time, specifically the notification process. The business operational hours, we believe, would be a much simpler and enforceable strategy over staff turnover and capacity. And so The resolution is prepared as directed, but staff does recommend removal of paragraph 3.0, and if there's additional desire to add some conditions that are enforceable, staff recommends looking at the pile height and business hours. And
Thank you.
the applicant is here with us today, Mr. Ryan Zimmerman, so he can speak to any questions regarding business operations.
Thank you very much. Council, have any, where they want to start? I thought, Dean, I thought I heard you say
I
you had-
spent time talking with the applicant and neighbors and such, and Natalie, you spoke about eliminating O,
Yeah, that's staff recommendation.
and I'm all for that, but I would still like that communication between the applicant and neighbors in an email stating that there will be excessive use or above normal trips on the days. I think the last time we talked, there was at one point numerous hundreds of yards of dirt needing to be moved. I don't think it's something that we can handle as staff right now, as far as the applicant sending you an email and you sending an email to the neighbors. If that's what I'm saying. Just something more direct from the applicant to the neighbors, if the neighbors want to sign up for that informational email.
Councilor Behrenkamp, the way paragraph O is currently written, does remove the city as the middleman,
Okay,
so
yep.
to speak. There are still concerns with this process just because emails are not perfect. There's many times where I've sent an email and it hasn't received the party that it was.
I understand all of
So there's
that.
just concern that it wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily reach all the interested parties, or they may not see it, and then the city would still be in the middle, even though we're trying to stay out of it.
Yep.
So that's the concern with keeping it, even with the applicant being required to. But the way the resolution's currently written, that would be what's
Okay.
approved.
So I agree with the 7A to 7P, one Monday through Friday, everything that was written in paragraph M. I did have a conversation with the applicant today. We talk about adding signage and an address sign to the end of the driveway. I spoke with the applicant. I don't know, I'm not there, but anybody that's going in and out of that driveway after 7 p.m., I think it could be prevented. And I wanted a little bit of input too from our safety folks. Is it another thing that we could add, to add some gates so it could be locked down at 7 p.m. and there would be no traffic in and out of that? Just thinking outside the box, preventing anybody from driving back there. I'll admit, back in my high school days, we partied at the quarry, and if we got in trouble, we got in trouble. If we didn't, we didn't. If that's the kind of traffic that's going in after that time frame, a gated drive and locked will deter some of that. I don't know how much, but making that suggestion would eliminate some of that traffic. And then the only other fix to that also is that instead of neighbors contacting our group that addresses these conflicts, addressing or calling the on-duty officer through the the Hennepin County Sheriffs and stuff, the number that takes them directly to a message, to leave a message for our community service officers to quickly call back, respond, and address after-hours operation. Am I saying those things correctly?
I believe I understand what you're getting at, yes.
Okay.
So as far as the gate, I don't necessarily have an opinion on that. I would like to understand the practicality from Mr. Sunder's point of view, Public Works and Public Safety. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that first, or I'm sorry, next. But the phone calls for hours of operations, that would be treated similar to our construction hour violation system. So they would either call 911, just for ease of remembering the number to call, and then that gets routed to the Corcoran Police Department, or they would call the non-emergency police line.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
And then what would happen is the police officer would go out there to confirm operations outside of
Okay.
those hours. I would receive a report, and then I'm following up with the applicant. It's how we handle our construction hours violations to date as well.
I think in the past, the neighbors had made a comment, they would call City Hall, a phone number, leave a message, and then it would just kind of go out into nowhere. I would like something that's more direct and more responsive to the moment at hand after the 7 PM shutdown.
Yes.
I'm just saying that. So a couple of things, I talked to the folks, thought about this over the last few days, and those are my suggestions. Gate the driveway along with addressing it like you have here. If that 911 number is better, that's great. I'd rather do something more immediate than calling one of our administrative folks, Mike Pritchard, you, anybody else at those after hours, and then not having information to follow up on and such. So,
Correct. That's why it's so important for anyone who is experiencing noise after
yeah,
after hours to call the police so that we can document it with people who are on staff at that moment in time. Because, yeah, our administrative staff is not in the office during
yep,
those.
and the thing that bothers me is if I call 911, this is an emergency, but it kind of is, please put me in contact with the on-duty officer for Corcoran. If you call our police, it says, if this is a non-emergency, please contact Hennepin County at whatever number will hook you up with. If the fastest way, quickest way is 911 and to report the issue and stuff, that's what I'd like to direct neighbors and those kind of things.
So I guess I would
Matt.
comment from public safety on the, we try and limit the police response to criminal activity, and the construction hours fall
I
under the noise
understand that.
ordinance. And as we have the different restrictions for each business, it becomes pretty excessive for our officers to keep track of what the civil restrictions on each property might be. And so if we're looking at setting them up for success or knowing what is or isn't illegal, there's, as you start adding these throughout the community, I would advocate for police not to be the one-stop shop for somebody just because they're there. But I think
That's why I'm asking.
I think documenting it is certainly it's certainly appropriate.
Aren't they the only resource to actually have something officially documented after hours? Like, maybe,
I'd say
How
we're
else
the
are
only
they supposed
staff-
to
We're
do
the
it
only
if-
staff that's on duty, and we're
Yeah.
the only city staff that's on duty, yes, but anybody can document what's happening. Now, the
how,
hard part is.
who can document it?
Well, I mean, anybody can document what's happening. I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
yeah, I guess.
Be there to verify.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
they're
when
the
they
only-
say,
They're the only city staff people that are on duty, yes.
so there'll be two people involved here, right? Them, and if you're saying they need to document it, well, oftentimes they'll say, well, if they said, oh, but there are people driving back there at 8 o'clock, then the other people might say, well, what prove that? Then it's two people against one. Oftentimes you call someone, you call the police department and come out here and look. You don't have to go arrest anybody, but like they are official document, they are an official way to document activity. Like, who else are they supposed to call to come? I'm just, I know you're advocating for, but I want to pause and say,
Who else could it be?
yeah, who else, if we're going to have a law or a rule or anything, I don't want to make a rule if we have actually no way to enforce it.
Yep,
It's
no,
a problem.
Yeah, and I'm zooming out, not looking at this as an individual thing, as an overarching policy. I just caution about this one and the next one and the next one as we go down.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that wormhole.
That's my caution. It's not with this instance, and
Okay.
it's not with this topic individually. I think we're certainly willing to, and have historically always tried to work with all of our city departments to make sure that we're enforcing the rules, and we would intend to do that.
So then my question of gating this driveway, what would that do to our public safety group, that if it's gated and there's activity beyond the gates, we know it wouldn't be a semi-truck, am I correct? I mean, it would be something else, so
Can
that
I
would be a whole
challenge you on
different
that
thing.
though, because there's agriculture in there, right?
I'm
So
asking, what?
we can't restrict hours of operation on an agriculture site.
Right, but I mean, if it's gated, the farmer has access, goes in, does his work and leaves and such, but I'm just kind of throwing something out there that controls stopping of going back and using this after hours for the Sunram landscaping business. But yeah, the farmer, there's no restrictions on that at all.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering where you were going with the gate, because you mentioned something about after-hours activities, and I thought you mentioned party, like youth.
I'm just saying, my experience was we'd go to the court and then we would get in trouble with the police.
We went out to a
and those
logging
kind of
road in
things.
the middle of nowhere, but.
So we all have our places we went when we were younger. I don't want that to be there, but you're absolutely
Well,
right. In the
as a-
spring and the fall, there's going to be activity on the farm pieces, and
Right.
it's a shared piece of property.
Right.
I'm throwing something out there.
I mean, that's
try
on,
and
that's
help.
on the landowner to enforce the rules of the IUP in that regard, in my mind.
Yeah, if there was a third party on the site screwing around, then.
But if they're dumping dirt at midnight,
Well, that's
Then
where the hours of
that's
operation
business.
come in.
yeah, then what? We should take away the IUP?
They'd be in violation of it.
I'd
Yeah.
say if it's a prolonged, serious problem, then that's a conversation, yeah, if it's in violation of the IUP.
But whose responsibility is it if dump truck driver goes at 11, even though owner said don't come after 7? Then what? How do we enforce that? What's the enforcement?
That's on the owner, just like, building work violations are on the developer's responsibility when they hire subcontractors on Tavera and other places.
So I just
in the
want to be
community.
clear about it, like, it doesn't matter who's doing it, so long as if it happens, then,
Yeah, the landowner is responsible for what goes on their property regardless, right? And the IUP is for the restriction based on the activities.
I have a question.
Go for it.
On this, this application, or I got two. Is this an approved use in ag? According to our city code?
This is an allowed use in the urban reserve district through an interim use permit, but it is an allowed use currently as our.
What's the
program.
definition of that use?
We don't have a definition. I confirmed with the city attorney that defining it within our resolution to the specific activities that we've discussed.
Yeah, so when
Yeah.
you say this is an allowed use, what's
Soil
this?
processing, mining and soil processing is an allowed use in the urban reserve district.
Okay. But there's an expansion here too. So on the table is not only existing operations, but the expansion area this is going to be, just to be clear, 3 times bigger than what it is today. And actually slightly higher than 3 times because the grade is lower in the expansion area. So that kind of, if there is a problem with truck traffic today and they expand it to be 3 times the size of what it is today, imagine what that's going to be like for people who live next door.
Councilor Bodema, I do hear what you're saying. When the applicant went through this process, SWIPs are pretty expensive document. And so I believe that was part of the reason why they decided to go ahead and just do the full threshold for a SWIP, and correct me if I'm wrong, to make it worthwhile as a business practicality. So I believe and it also allows them to have shorter stockpiles instead of the height that they currently have, because it will spread it out further away from the nearest property to the west, and then allow for those piles to be shorter.
I think the other mechanism we had discussed briefly was adding additional plantings at that berm area. There was one segment that Natalie had in the original staff report that could allow berming to have a little bit more height.
Where's the berm area again?
Did you go out there, Bill?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's, only issue, the big issue is the the truck traffic next door. Like the berming over on the south and west, it's not a problem, actually. The
No.
berm is pretty high and
Okay.
The western property is actually higher, I think, than the pile, from what I could tell.
yeah. it's
It
kind of-
is.
And that was one of my questions about the measurement. Where is the actual toe considered? Because the edge of the cornfield is significantly lower than any portion of the pile.
If you look at the, could you go back a couple slides? Okay, right here. So my understanding from engineering, and correct me if I'm wrong, that northeast corner is the low point of the site. So the elevation of 1011 was identified based on the existing ground elevation there. And the pile cannot exceed a height of 10 of 11 or 35 feet, whichever is less. So even though the site varies in thank you. In elevation, we are basing the limit on the low point of the stockpile locations.
The low point, you're going by,
The low point, which is in that northeast corner,
what's the elevation of that again?
976.
976, so we're going 35 feet above 976?
correct.
So that would apply, I gotta do my math. Sorry. What is that, 1,011, 1,010?
Mhm. Yes,
So that would apply to the western portion, the elevation?
That's what we're proposing.
that's what staff is proposing. yes.
Okay. Because using elevation with the GPS measurements is gonna be way easier than try to figure out 35 feet.
Correct, and with drones nowadays, it's very easy to confirm existing elevations of stockpiles.
Is that written in the memo or the resolution that way?
Yes,
Yep.
the height is written in that way as it's currently proposed. Paragraph 3D.
So that green line that surrounds most of that area, is that where a berm is going to be constructed? Is that what that's indicating?
Yes.
And that's new, correct?
I believe there's a berm there today,
Okay.
but they are going to improve it and make it an even 15 feet across the board. And then they're going to expand it, obviously, because where they're proposing to put stockpiles is expanding. So it will be adjusted, but there is an existing berm there today.
Okay. This doesn't show on the contour map?
That's cornfield right now.
These are
There's,
like LiDAR, so I don't
Yeah.
think there's,
And there wouldn't be a berm there today?
No.
I think there's a berm on the west and the southwest corner, and then they're proposing to meet a detail
Okay.
and then wrap that around.
So that will be new in
Yes.
Yeah.
most of the circumference? Okay. That seems like it would help properties to the north.
well, there'll be cornfield in front of it, so,
And that's helpful for 2 months a year.
for 2 months of the year.
We don't have corn in winter.
I mean, it's pretty well, when you go out out there, the pile is pretty much hidden by vegetation. I think the concern is,
The noise.
it's the traffic from the road, but I drove in there with my truck, and it's not like a road you're gonna accelerate heavily on, right? So you're gonna hear the trucks as they make this turn coming south and going to the west, because there's a little bit of a incline there. And you're probably gonna hear them as they slow down coming down, but they're not gonna go, they're not traveling over 15 miles an hour, if that.
I think it's the backup beeps in the
Backing up in there.
Well, and hopefully some of that should be
Yeah, and the
addressed with
slam,
the
you know,
hours and
Slamming
weekends.
in the back tailgate. of it.
Yeah, I mean, operation hours.
yeah, that I think would help.
Yeah. Which is in there, the 7 to 7 and Monday through Friday, no weekends, no holidays.
And berms can sometimes help with reflecting some of that noise back too.
Can't hurt.
And then you've got written in here, if I may, we talk about the sweeping, street sweeping, the cleaning of County Road 50 needs to be done at the end of the day or throughout the day. What did we write?
Yes, so they are held to the promises made in their narrative, which includes street sweeping when there's sediment tracking onto the road. Additionally, they are installing a new construction entrance, which will further limit any sediment tracking. So you can't really see it very well, but it's this yellow hash mark to the north. So that will further prevent some of the sediment tracking. And then I believe they also, Hennepin County is also looking at this access plan, and they're also putting some sediment tracking requirements too. So there's several things happening for the sediment tracking, and then whatever does get on the road, they are responsible for sweeping.
What does the sediment tracking entail? Is that the large aggregate like they're using on Hackamore 116, basically? All right.
What is it usually?
Yes, I mean, it's limited to some sort of rock, larger rock that kind of shakes off the sticky clay.
Off the tires.
Essentially, they'll be required to have an MS4, or as part of the MS4 program, a site SWIP. That site SWIP they're responsible to manage. If the county gets called, if we get calls, we would contact them and say, follow your SWIP. If there's non-compliance, then the MPCA would step in and have a conversation. So it's actually a more formalized approach to be able to address that, and actually more of a commitment by the landowner to address it.
In the current,
If that's fair to say.
the current IUC or IUP doesn't have that stuff written into it.
There's no current.
Okay.
on the
Oh, there's no, this used to be handled as a grading permit.
Okay.
So this, a lot of this is being formalized for the very first time.
Okay, yep. The other question that I had was, didn't the city so-called say where that road went to the back of this property? Wasn't the city part of that road location?
Not to my knowledge.
Just the driveway location
It's, I mean,
related to the county and everything else?
The access to 50 is primarily because of the wetlands on each side.
Okay,
To my knowledge, that's a private property kind of component. It's a county road and a private property component, so we're limited. I don't believe we dictated any of that. Some of that was before my time, but I don't believe we dictated the driveway alignment.
can I ask,
Yes,
does the
please.
applicant have anything he'd like to share or tell us?
Please come up. You can just give your name and address for the record first.
Mayor, Council, my name is Ryan Sunram, Sunram Construction. Business address is 20010 75th Avenue North. This is the first time we've had to apply for interim use permit. We've had grading permits for 15 to 17 years. It's been in this location the entire time. I know it hasn't been perfect, but it's been going on for quite a while. The whole reason we're requesting this entire area is, like Natalie said, it's a lot of work to get the permit. We don't want to have to change the permit. I don't intend on using this entire area, but I would like it available if we need it. So, let's see, this has been the footprint that we've had for probably 15 years. I know there's been truck traffic, so material goes in and out. I do like the idea of a gate. There shouldn't be anyone back there tonight. No, and I think that would help.
Yeah, that's easy to spot if there are kids messing around. That we wouldn't call the police.
Yeah, I would say generally we discourage gates because we find that people who want to be back in there are going to be, it more restricts public safety access.
Just throwing the idea out, guys. I'm trying to help both sides, the business and the residents, so.
Gates give you something to lean your gun on when you're shooting trespassers.
I know I've left my front gate on my pasture open a couple of times, and I've had people do use on my front pasture because the front gate's open.
Yeah.
When it's chained and closed, nobody goes in except the horses are out there.
Adding a gate wouldn't necessarily have to be part of this process. That could be.
I believe the as far as the city's concerned, I think it's more working with the county just to make sure it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I don't see any reason why, if the applicant wants to put up a gate, why they wouldn't be allowed to. I would assume that public safety would probably want to work with them to make sure that there's access.
But
for
we
them.
wouldn't have to address it in this IUP.
If it's something the applicant wants, and we don't necessarily want to require it, we do not need to add it into the IUP, no.
Making the suggestion, throwing it out there. I know, Ryan, you and I had the conversation. There shouldn't be any activities back there after business hours. I think I made the comment too, a little bit of cleanup on, I mean, we're very specific on what can be back there. Ag equipment, equipment that's back there can only be back there if it's being used, otherwise it doesn't stay back there. What pieces of equipment would stay back there?
They cycle in and out. You know, it depends what we need. If we're hauling out, there'd be an excavator. If we're bringing in, there'd be a dozer. We're just kind of cleaning up. You know, sometimes there'd be a truck back there.
And would that be in violation of what we've written right now? Because some of that stuff you don't want to move in and out of there every time, but needs to be parked appropriately and addressed and locked down and.
That's paragraph 3E, says exterior storage of equipment necessary to maintain the stockpiles and comply with their SWIP is allowed as long as the equipment is screened from the right-of-way and adjacent properties. So it should not be visible, and I would assume the applicant would want to lock it down to avoid riffraff. So I'm not too concerned about that language specifically, but we do have it so that we minimize the visibility of the equipment.
Just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
And there are trees here that have grown over the years, but, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't take trees down.
Yeah. I think, you know, we certainly talked a lot about, kind of got back to the draft resolution additions are that language, particularly in M and O, and clarification on E, outside of the gate discussion, which like
Throwing it out there,
Could be
I think
incorrect,
another
yeah.
good thing that there was a concern with other people too is related to what type of soil, what testing, those kind of things, but I think Natalie's got that written in here real nice. And if there's issues, it would be addressed by the MPDA and everything would be covered that way, so.
Correct.
It's actually taking something that has been there a long time and controlling it a little bit more. Again, knowing your business and landscaping, moving dirt, that's part of you, that's your business, so. You've been there a long time, I don't wanna see it go away, but you said it well last time you were on, you wanna be a good neighbor. We need to clean some of this stuff up, make it nice, make it right. And, I mean, right now, I live across the street from an active dairy farm. They've been chopping corn for the last 2 weeks and there's not one thing I can say or do about it, but I get calls from everybody in the neighborhood saying, they gotta shut that off. No, they're an ag farm, you live next to an ag farm, that's the way it goes. Or they stir the slurry, it smells for 3 weeks. It's going to smell, you live next to a dairy farm. I've seen so many people upset that they bought a house on a golf course and they're upset that golf balls land in their backyard. The Dugans, you've moved into a beautiful home, beautiful piece of property. Don't know if you knew it was next to you. It's been there a long time. I don't want the conflict, but I think there's some controls that can be put in place. And I think this is a good start to them. If there's more, we can talk more about it. That makes sense.
I think maybe the gate discussion is a good thing to maybe explore some more and look at separately from this if that's the right fit and maybe helps with some of those concerns as well. So, perfect. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how does council feel about all, given staff's concerns?
I still like it in that it, you know, it won't be perfect, just given the nature of email and staff constraints, but I think that a good faith effort on it, maybe we'll add language to that effect. Still gives us some teeth if it's just blatantly being ignored and not attempted to comply with that.
So what would we require? The people within 500 feet to provide the applicant with their email address or something?
Yeah, so I would recommend that the applicant send a letter, and we can provide the property addresses within 500 feet that provides a date, like an opt-in date. So should this be approved, for example, tonight, maybe the opt-in date is by December 1st of this year, to provide the email address for notifications for next construction season. You'll probably be done by December, or do you still use the site?
A lot of times we'll export in the summer and import in the winter.
Okay, I see. So, so that would allow for use as of December 1st when it exceeds, we have it written right now for 20 trips. There is still concern with staff's ability to count when we're trying to move away from counting trips because we don't really have a way to do that given current staff capacity. So, but with it currently written, that would be the threshold, and they would notify anyone that's provided their email address. And even though the opt-in date is December 1st, someone could, the way it's written, someone can opt in later, but that would just be their starting base. And then it's kind of on the responsibility of property owners who didn't opt in to change their mind and notify Mr. Sunram of that. And then he would send an email out 72 hours at least in advance of when the truck trips will exceed 20. So that's to and from the site total. And then staff will need to be CC'd on that email notice to be able to.
Well, I'm thinking about the logistics of it, right? So you have a neighbor that sells, whose responsibility is to go out and get the email address of the new property owner?
That is one of the concerns in the staff report.
That's a mess.
I don't even
I
know
think
if
that's
that
why
would
it's an
help.
opportunity, right?
help
It's
the
not a
situation
requirement
anyway.
that everybody is contacted. The requirement is there's a process that's followed. If somebody moves in 2028 and they hear about, hey, there's this email I can get, I would assume it would be not a lot of additional effort to add one more email to the standard list. I mean, I feel like we shouldn't make perfect the enemy of the good. And if it adds value for the people who surround it to be included on an email, I feel like it's a reasonable thing to do. But I wouldn't want to shut down the IUP because somebody new isn't included on a half dozen emails because they didn't ever try to enroll. We can be reasonable how we apply it.
Well, I mean, yeah, but reasonableness and ordinances kind of fall out of the window sometimes. It's how do you enforce it years down the road? And I wouldn't want it to fall to the applicant to chase who the property owners is every year in the surrounding properties.
I don't think this text does. Because all it says is the applicant must allow properties within 500 feet the opportunity to opt in.
So somebody's got to notify the new property owners to make them aware that there's an opt-in option.
There's no, it doesn't read that way.
Well, how are they going to know? Is it
Talk to their
expected-
other neighbors.
Yeah.
Or if they ever call the city to complain, hey, what are all these trucks doing?
Oh, and then they say you need to opt
Here's
in
the
at this
address.
point.
Yeah.
They just have the ability to, the requirement is that they have the ability to be put on that if they so choose.
Right. It's not a requirement that everybody is notified every time.
Right.
I think it's going to be difficult,
How many other interim use permits do we have?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Wouldn't expect you to.
We do have several. We have several home occupations.
Okay.
This would be the first time we have any kind of a notification requirement for business operations that are approved. So that was, I'll just point to the staff report. I think the concerns have been outlined, so.
It turns into the one, all of a sudden, we're gonna have to do anything like for like.
Yes.
And then it's the whole definition around home business. Like I said, I live across from probably the last dairy farm in Hennepin County. They're busy folks. It's fun to live across the street from them and watch and listen.
Excuse me. Mayor, I apologize.
Go ahead.
That is the other concern is the agriculture component, because as you said, there
Yep.
can be a lot of activity on agricultural use, and trying to decipher that can be difficult at times. So, again, that's just the concern with counting trips and tying it to the trips. I think it'd be better to limit the hours of operations. But that, it's currently written as best I can with the direction provided.
Last question from me, if I may, Mr. Mayor. How much do we have the right to limit trips on a county road, since it's not our road?
It's not the road. The answer is 0.
Yeah.
We don't, it's not that complicated.
I'm just saying,
Can't. It's 0.
No, yeah, we don't have a way to limit trips on really any public road, even a city road. It's one thing, it's a gray area when we're talking about a specific site.
Yep.
But we also have to consider staff capacity. So.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to accept the resolution, but striking item O. I think it's too burdensome on staff and the applicant, and I honestly don't think it's gonna bring you much benefit to get an email.
Okay, so we have a motion on amending the resolution 2023-86 to strike item O. Do we have a second?
I'd second it
Okay. Any
with
further
hope that
discussion?
the Sunram company would search out and seek out the neighbors and build a neighborly relationship, if I'm making sense.
Yeah, certainly encourage that. Any other discussion on that? Nope, then, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Okay.
3-2, that does pass, so the resolution has now been amended to strike line O.
Who were the names?
McKee, Nichols.
Thank you.
So then, does someone want to make a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
4-1, 5.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
The council staff, if this is something we want to avoid for future applicants, I think we should look at writing something in the ordinance to limit it, to very strictly limit these IUPs in the future to your concern about having something like this come up in another property in another location in the city.
Yeah.
And I think we could be creative in how we limit it.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of that. Just making that out here. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good
very
luck.
much.
All right, on to item 8B, which is a interim ordinance storage moratorium. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Very quick presentation. At the last meeting, City Council directed staff to prepare an interim ordinance preventing further mini storage and self-storage applications throughout the city. So staff took that direction and did your request. We did specifically clarify that this would not apply to Pioneer Trail Industrial Park, which has preliminary approval for plans that highly suggested a storage user. So to avoid conflicts with that, that's specifically called out in the recitals as something that could move forward even with this interim ordinance. But any other industrial or rural commercial land that has this as a possible conditional use, we could not accept an application for the next year. And the study that we're citing is our work that we are planning to complete for our commercial industrial district updates. So, if
A year or upon.
sooner,
Yeah,
yes,
yep.
correct. So there are two ordinances in front of you tonight. The first one just needs a simple majority, and that is the interim ordinance itself. The second item is the summary ordinance for publication, which requires a 4/5 majority.
Can I make a motion
Yes, you can.
that we adopt 2023-505? And, well, we'll do it. I guess we can do it at the same time. If we get 4/5, then they're both good.
if you want to make the motion on,
And the 2023-506 for summary publication.
we have a
Second.
second. I think initially from Schultz, yep. Jeremy, you're close third.
First loser.
Yeah.
I'll take
And then on
bronze any day.
discussion on that, I would just note that we do have the 4/5 majority, so if,
We haven't voted yet. If we do have.
right,
For
but it's all in one.
anybody listening, it's more than just that property. We've got garages too. We've got a number of things in process.
Yes, it'd be for new applications.
That keeps going. This is straight up new
Correct,
application,
yes.
which was a great suggestion, a great idea, I think, with all of the things we've got
Yeah.
available and coming right now, so.
So does anyone have concern with knowing that there's a 4/5 majority for the summary act? Oh, we're all good, okay. Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Unanimous. On to 9, unfinished business. We have 2 items, and we'll have a public comment opportunity first for items 9A and 9B, which are the Met Council density follow-up and Charter Commission amendment discussion.
All right, anyone in the audience wishing to speak on items 9A or 9B, go to the podium, state your name and address. Anyone joining us virtually, please press *9 or click reactions and raise your hand. This time I do not see anybody.
Then
I
we'll-
haven't asked, Mr. Mayor, how many people do we have online?
It looks like we have our commissioner and one other.
Okay,
Yes, definitely.
thanks guys for attending.
Appreciate it. So yeah, let's go on to 9A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. This is really more just a report to follow up on a discussion we had earlier this summer about looking at the options to remove natural resource preservation from our density calculations. We did meet with, planning staff did meet with our representative at the Met Council, Freya Feynman, and she confirmed our understanding as staff that it does need to be a ordinance that applies across the board and it needs to be mapped. We did push for them to reconsider this with the 2050 update. She seemed open to that and said she would bring that back to her group to allow for cities to incentivize it and still count towards it. So we're hopeful that they might consider it. They said that natural resource preservation was one of their priorities in the 2050 update. So we asked them to honor that through allowing cities to incentivize versus a punishable approach. So that's what we have for you now. We don't currently have any recommendations to change how we calculate other than what we currently have within our city code, which also deviates a bit from the Met Council council definition of density. And we are hopeful that the 2050 update will bring some changes.
Thank you.
I am on the Land Use Advisory Committee, and so I'm glad they're open to it,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see if their actions
Match the words.
match their words.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll say that our representative was very open to the idea, so I think it's not just her making that call. So
Staff or Judy?
Freya Feynman,
Okay.
she was very active in the meeting with her. She was writing down notes, and I feel that she heard me and Kendra stressing the importance of that. So
Great. Okay.
Yes, so our Metropolitan Council representative is Judy or Freya?
so
representative
Freya
is Judy.
Feynman is our representative. So I think, that's my understanding, and that's who I've been in contact with, and that's who wanted to come to that's who came to the meeting.
Your
Staff representative.
Okay,
That's
yes,
what confusing.
all right,
I'm
yes.
sorry. So the
Okay.
staff representative is Freya. That's where the confusion is stemming from.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
For this part, I don't know if they're districts or what they go by that council, it's Judy Johnson for
Yeah.
the, not elected, but
Appointments?
appointed, yep. Okay, then on to 9B, which is a Charter Commission amendment discussion.
All right, thank you,
For
Mr.
the
Mayor.
follow-up from previous meeting.
Yeah, this is continued from September 14th. So previously, the Charter Commission, there was discussion about reviewing the city council structure relating to the mayor's term. Again, we spoke about this on September 14th. There are some strict timelines that would be associated, decided to move forward with this. So that's outlined here in the table. Administrative Services Director Hughes was at the last Charter Commission. Do you have anything to add from the last meeting?
I do not.
Okay. So I guess we'll, I think you've had a chance to kind of review the staff reports and considerations. I think there was some good council questions that were brought up, so I guess we'll turn it over to you guys.
Sounds good, thank you. And I think we had discussed this last time with, John, you weren't sure about the 9th, and it sounds like that turned into it, you're unable to attend.
Yeah.
Does the 20th work for you and for the rest of council? Because it does require that full.
My calendar says council meeting for sure on November 20th.
Good deal. That's a good start. I would assume mine does as well, but hopefully I don't have anything planned that day. Let's see here. That's a Monday meeting.
Monday the 20th?
Yep.
I'm good.
Me too.
Yep.
We got 5. Perfect. Then I would entertain a motion to direct staff to publish a notice in the October 26th Crow River News for public hearing on the charter amendment at the council meeting on November 20th.
Does that take a motion?
I made a motion to direct staff. It can be
Second.
a motion.
Okay.
I second your motion.
I'll make the motion, John will second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You could have thirded that one
And
again.
we have a light
I'll
agenda
third
on
it.
that 20th since we get the packet only 3 days before.
That will be the hope.
Michelle had
Looking
a
up, we
Snickers,
have
so
ahead.
I'm guessing it might be.
That's not a good sign.
I have no comment right now.
Well, right now on the schedule, it shows light, but that is a bit out.
Maybe we should
Things
just
could change.
moratorium everything up until that point.
Yeah.
Moratorium packets.
Okay. Then, if I can just get back to my main page here. No new business, no staff reports, and we are moving on to a couple closed sessions. The city council will enter a closed session to discuss non-public health and medical data which must be discussed in a closed session per Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 2A, 3, and 4. Upon adjournment of that closed session per the authority of Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3, the city council will enter into a second closed session to consider an offer for real estate or personal property. The following properties are the subject of that closed meeting. PID 23119-234-10007, PID 24119-2333-0002, PID 24119-2334-0002, PID 24119-2333-0004. Closed session.
Recording stopped.